Hello and welcome to a special edition of Susan McManaman's 365-Day Painting Challenge, How to Paint a Christmas Ornament. First of all, the colors I used in this painting are ultramarine blue, alizarin permanent, cadmium yellow medium, cadmium yellow light, sap green, titanium white, and Indian yellow. Next, to figure out my composition, I really like using a view catcher. I add and remove items to the scene until I find something I'm really excited about painting. The big challenge in this scene will be to get the shape of those ornaments correct. To do that, I like to create circles with lines. So first, I measure out a square for each ornament, and then I draw the circle with lines. Now I'm going to double check the placement of the neck or nipple, however you want to say it, of the ornament. I put a line through the middle, and now I'm checking either side to make sure it was even. And now I'm comparing the lines of the neck with that line I drew through the center of the ornament to make sure they're parallel. I like to use the hole in the center of the view catcher to analyze the colors I'm seeing in the still life. And then once I've found those colors, I mix puddles of paint for the major shapes in my composition. So here you can see I am outlining for you the major shapes that I see in this composition. So the first was the reflected table in the larger silver ornament, and then the dark portion of the ornament, moving over to the golden one, the upper top dark portion, and the reflected lighter bottom portion. Then the tabletop, that's actually two shapes, a brighter portion at the front and then a slightly darker portion on the top of the table. Then the background color, and then last but not least, the shadow that the larger ornament is casting. Here I'm mixing the color for the lighter part of the golden ornament, using the cadmium yellows and the alizarin crimson, and perhaps a little bit of Indian yellow. The two greens you see at the bottom are the lighter portion of the tabletop and the darker portion of the tabletop. The last color you'll see me mixing into this puddle right there is a 50-50 mixture of the alizarin permanent and the ultramarine blue, which I use like a black, a very dark color, and I've added it to this yellow mixture to dull it down to more of a metallic color. Okay, next I've got those puddles mixed. Let's fill in those big shapes. I've put a little inset of the color puddles that I created there. You see the three from earlier, plus a bigger puddle of that mixed black, the alizarin crimson and the ultramarine blue mixed together, and then two darker greens at the top for the background. And the shadow. Once those big shapes are painted in, it's time to go back and smooth and adjust the edges of where those shapes meet. This involves a minimal amount of brush strokes, if you can do that, and a lot of cleaning off of the brush. So every time that brush disappears, I've wiped it off on a paper towel to clean it. So I'm going to start adding some of the small shapes that I see while I'm finishing correcting these edges. So I'm constantly looking over at my subject and comparing it to my painting, squinting, looking for differences in color temperature, straight up color changes, value changes. It's a constant back and forth, squinting, comparing. And then as I get those big shapes where I feel comfortable with them, here I'm cleaning up that edge a little bit more there, and then cleaning up the brush strokes in the background so they're not quite so busy. So once I get comfortable with those big shapes being about right, then I will continue to work on smaller and smaller shapes within the big shapes. This is always a bit of a tough spot here with the shadow underneath the neck and underneath the ball itself. There's a lot of reflected light, which I love painting reflected light, but there's a lot of light reflecting off of the ornament back onto the tablecloth. Sometimes when you've got a lot of paint on your surface, the easiest way to modify the color is not to mix the color on your palette, but to mix the color on the painting itself by applying color straight to the canvas there and then brushing it in. That's hard to control, that method, so it's kind of a last measure. Okay, I've squinted and noticed, okay, that background looks a little bit darker, so I added that. Now we're going to move along, so here you can start seeing all the smaller shapes in the balls. I'm painting them in and looking for all those slight differences. Trying to keep those shapes circular. Building up. Oop, the highlight. That's a really fun part to put in. Now I've turned to painting sideways to double check my circles, because what looks circular in one direction often doesn't in another. So it's a great way to check yourself. Ooh, adding the little hanger. I love that part. With a teeny tiny brush. And going back, re-adding the shadow under the ornament. Got to make sure that's there. Refining, double checking, lots more squinting, and there she is. I hope you enjoyed this and found this helpful. And I hope you give it a chance and try it yourself. Thanks so much for watching and for subscribing. Ciao!